So I've got a load of time, a lot of free time, play golf maybe once or twice a week. You know, freedom to go and look at whatever I want to do, really.
And the annual revenue of the group combined is now?
Around 10 million.
10 million.
So, Jonathan, our guest on the podcast this week is Danny, who I believe spoke at your Dealmakers Live event earlier in the month. I'd be really interested to know, when you first met Danny, did you see something in him that made you think, yeah, he's going to be a good student?
So I think with Danny, it was very clear to see that he has the demeanor of a professional, that aura of confidence, because the seller of a business has to believe in you. And I think with Danny, yeah, you'll see on the video that he's someone that you would believe in, trust. If you sold this person your business, you would trust it to be in safe hands. It's so much of it's about attitude. I mean, he's gone from 0 to 10 million of revenue in the last few years, which is just an incredible journey. And as he said, I wish I'd done this years ago. And everyone says that. Everyone says the same. I wish I'd done this years ago. I think he started off listening to the podcast and came to a morning, afternoon or something event with me. I believe it was in Birmingham. So this was pre-pandemic, and then took the step to mastermind, and he's never looked back. I mean, look at the guy now. He's done amazingly and deserves every bit of that success. He was the one who, I gave him the strategies to get started, but he was the one who put the effort and the work in.
Okay, so a couple of years before, we'd sold our family business, which was a curtain fabric wholesale company. We sold it to a Saudi Arabian company. And part of the deal was that I had to stay on and run it for 3 years, or at least 3 years. I think when we sold, I thought this could be a whole new career. Rather being a small fish in the pond, than being a big fish. But after about 2 weeks and one trip to Jeddah, I thought it's going to be a long 3 years. So I was down in London, the meeting, and I was driving back up, fed up, thinking what am I going to do next? Because I'm not staying on a day longer than 3 years. So downloaded some podcasts, and this guy was being interviewed talking about buying businesses as a career. I thought this is really interesting. Oh, he does his own podcast. So pulled into services, downloaded Jonathan's podcast, and started listening and just like ticking every box of what I've done in the past, what my skills are, what I like doing. So got home online, and he was running a taster half-day event in Birmingham. So I booked myself onto that and signed on that day to do the course, the mastermind. So I think pretty much 5 years to the day I sent my first batch of letters out.
Okay. And can I ask you a question about mindset? So when you had the family business, did you perceive yourself as a business owner, operator, manager, so a business person? How do you perceive yourself now?
That's a good question, because the kids ask me, what's your job? It's like, I don't know. I would say business owner, entrepreneur. Typical response is I own a group of businesses. I don't work in them day to day. I've got people who run them, and I spend my time now looking for the next acquisition and problem solving where necessary.
So when you say you don't run them, because that almost sounds too good to be true, that there's all these things sort of happen without you. What's your management structure?
So each company's got a general manager, and I say to them, you run this business as if it's your own business. So you're in charge day to day, you're the boss. When I go in, I'll obviously speak to the staff, but I'll always defer to the general manager. I call myself the FD/chairman. So we'll agree a strategy and a business plan. I'll get sort of monthly cash flows, management accounts, weekly KPIs, just to make sure everything is okay. And if something's not, then we can jump on it there and then. But yeah, let the guys run it day to day as if it's their own. And I just charge them a monthly management fee.
Okay. So you draw the money out as a monthly management fee. Okay. So across each business pays you something every month. Now, how do you spend your time then? You said looking for more deals.
Either writing letters or LinkedIn activity. Now get a lot of people contacting me with opportunities. And then it's case of, right, once you got a head signed on a deal, then it's sort of, you jump in with both feet on that. I do my own due diligence now on that. I do all the fundraising for it, but so that takes up a chunk of time when there's a deal going on.
Sure.
Liaising with solicitors when there's a deal going on.
So making the deal happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And how does that compare to your former life or being in the business?
Well, I don't have to drive around the country visiting small curtain shops anymore. So a lot less time in the car. I used to commute 40 minutes there and back each day, basically for a day of problem solving and stress. You know, all staff problems, cash flow problems, faulty fabric problems, everything really. Customers. So none of that now. Rarely, I never speak to a customer now. Only speak to the general managers, maybe one or two other people at the staff.
Okay.
So I've got a load of time, a lot of free time, play golf maybe once or twice a week. Just spending time looking for the, freedom to go and look at whatever I want to do really.
And the annual revenue of the group combined is now
Around 10 million.
10 million.
Yeah.
Okay. And you did your most recent deal, was it August?
October.
Okay.
Okay.
Fantastic. Let's talk about Paragon first, please.
So, Paragon Toolmaking was my first acquisition. So when I started off in January 2020, I looked at various different sectors. I looked at caravan parks. I looked at domiciliary care. I looked at nursing homes. I had lots of meetings, but domiciliary care, there's no assets in the business. So I thought, well, how are you going to fund this acquisition? So I looked at it. If I wanted to buy a business, how am I going to buy it through a leverage buyout? So, well, manufacturing, you've got the plant and machinery, you've got the debtors, you've got staff, you can work the machines. All the knowledge just doesn't walk out the door when the owner leaves. So this was April time, middle of lockdown 1.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan sent a letter template out to everybody saying this is a emergency letter, sort of COVID.
That's right. I updated
letter.
it. Yeah.
So I sent that to manufacturing companies in the north of England. Got a phone call back, like, who are you? And I just positioned myself as, well, I sold my business. I'm looking to reinvest. I can't go into textiles again because I've got a non-compete. So I'm looking at manufacturing. And we had a few conversations via Zoom. This was a company that owned a group of companies and they were looking to divest what they said was a non-core asset. They said, right, make me an offer. And I was like, well, this was a tool making company. I didn't know what a tool maker was. Some would say I still don't. I thought, well, I'll just put in the business owned the property. So I'll just put in a lowball offer, which was roughly equated to about 2 times EBITDA plus the value of the property. I said, I'll pay you for the property on day 1 with the rest deferred over 4 years, thinking they'll tell me to get stuffed. And they said, yeah, we'll do that deal. So, I thought, great, or oh shit, better follow through with it now. So yeah, got the heads of terms signed and then got an accountant to do the FDD while I went around trying to find someone to buy this property. Because one of the deal structures Jonathan teaches is the sale and lease back. I spoke to property surveyors who put me in touch with people. So I had quite a few irons in the fire, but then a friend of mine who'd recently sold his business, he owned commercial property, owned residential property. And I just said, are you interested in buying commercial properties? And he's like, absolutely. I'm fed up of worrying about claiming VAT back every quarter. It's going to raise a red flag with HMRC. I need to be keep my head below the parapet. So I said, well, here's the valuation report. And he said, yeah, I'll buy that. It was actually a good friend of mine who bought the property. So on the day of completion, he bought the property from the company. That cash went out to the sellers. The shares in the business transferred to me. And then we paid for the business. I paid for the business over the course of 4 years. So nice deal structure, no money down. We completed in August 2020. Didn't quite anticipate 2 further lockdowns.
No one did.
So it was a tough market, and to be fair, it's been a tough market for the last 4.5 years. But the business is still there. We've just received a couple of good orders, so things are looking good.
So earlier on, I was saying how important it is to get the first deal right, and you did it with no additional debt in the business. It was a very clean transaction. Yep. So what is your personal experience of doing that first deal, getting the first deal, choosing the first deal carefully?
I wasn't going to rush into anything. I wanted something that was a no money down deal. no personal risk. So yeah, having had deals that have gone wrong subsequently, I think if it had gone wrong in the first deal, that would have been a steep learning curve and probably would have been.
So it's like, you've got to get the first one right because everything after that will be impacted if you don't. It's so important.
You're watching this because you're interested in buying a business. So get my business buying toolkit free of charge. 17 downloads, videos, reports, and my books as well, completely free of charge. The link is right below.
So the good thing about this deal structure is the business hasn't actually taken on any debt. So you don't have to service that debt going forward. And it worked out roughly half of EBITDA was deferred. So that wasn't stressing, or shouldn't have been stressing the business too much. It already had the same management team in place. There was no new management. So that was low risk from that point of view. You know, maybe we should have picked something, a market I knew a bit more about.
Well, this was what I was going to ask you next. You didn't have any knowledge of this sector whatsoever. Did that at any point concern you, or did you feel as though the management was sufficiently robust to run it without you anyway?
Well, there's a healthy amount of arrogance and optimism, naivety, should we say, in there. But I wouldn't have done it if there wasn't management already in place.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Who'd worked in the business for years. So that de-risked it from my point of view, because they ran it day to day, because it wasn't owner operated. So I thought that takes the risk out of it. And we knew there were orders in the pipeline coming through. So we just need one of those to drop in the first sort of 6 weeks, and then things were fine. Also, this was at the good old times where you could get a $250,000 C-bills loan fairly easily. So I had that lined up in place.
If you needed it.
If I needed it for cash flow going forward.
Very good. Okay, let's move on to Fairgrieve.
Yep. Okay. This was advertised on I think it's some kind of business for sale website, but one of those sites that sell fish and chip shops and news agents. And I was flicking through and just saw manufacturing business. And whilst it manufactures something different, the business model is pretty much exactly the same. Customer comes to us with their drawings, their specs. Can you make this? Yes. Here's the price. Get the order, get on with it. And this one was a retirement sale, and the price was listed on the website. So that makes things easier straight away, because you can already structure a deal before you have the meeting. Own the property again. So I said, okay, you want whatever it was for the business, on the property. I said, look, I bought this business sort of, last year, and here's the deal structure. So I proposed to mirror that deal structure with this deal. So we agreed the price of the property on day one, and then the rest deferred over 4 years. And they said, yeah, okay, we'll agree that deal structure. But this time I borrowed money from Paragon, paid the deposit, and got a commercial mortgage. So we retained ownership of the property with that one. And then subsequently we've remortgaged that property and stripped it out into my holding company. So I now lease that property to the company.
Again, another reason for getting the first deal right is because if it's the right deal, you can then refinance that business or take money out of that business to buy business number 2. Business number 2 funds business number 3. Number 3 by number 4. But that's, great strategy.
I recruited somebody to run the business. So I ran a recruitment process during the SPA negotiation stage. And Barry was waiting in the car park on the day of completion. So the solicitor rang me and said, congratulations, you bought the business. Thanks a lot. Barry, right, you can come in now. And it's like, hey, everyone, this is your new boss. So Barry's great. He runs it day to day. But with that one, we found a lot of skeletons in closets, literally. The previous sellers, nearly literally, the previous sellers left his father's ashes in a drawer in the office. And we found asbestos in the floor, which they hadn't told us about, various bits. So fortunately, we had good warranties in the SPA. So we had to say, look, we have to agree a reduced amount for the business, or we'll have to claim on these warranties.
But you didn't do a warranty claim, did you?
No,
you didn't need to. Good.
Didn't need to. We just said, here's the difference between what I owe you and what the claims would be.
Just to insert something here, I think it's very relevant, is that we have a panel of lawyers that our mastermind clients use, who are very, very practical. Because if you go to a bog standard solicitor, they will say, these warranties will protect you. They don't. They really don't. And you will spend days, weeks negotiating warranties, and there is no protection there at all. Again, having the right team. We haven't talked about team yet, but having the right team on your team is critical.
Yeah. So, that was a tough couple of conversations, sort of renegotiating that. I didn't really want to do it. The idea is that you want them to retire happily. Your reputation for your next acquisition is based on how you treated the previous sellers, but there wouldn't have been a business there if we hadn't made that claim. So that business was all paid for in the first sort of 12 months. And that's probably been commercially the most successful acquisition. Got good people who run it, new customers, and the property's increased in value quite a lot as well. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, I've done okay there. So, Ashlyne Fabrications, this was I sourced this one through a guy. I had a deal which we didn't complete on, but we signed heads, and I was recruiting somebody to run it for me. So I interviewed this chap, but then the deal collapsed. So I rang up and said, look, really sorry, but we're not going ahead with deals. So there's no job for you. And he said, well, actually, the guy I'm working for is looking to retire. Can I put you in touch? So we did. And he said, if I want to retire, I need X for the business. So we said, right, okay, to get to X, then I'll need to structure the deal this way. So I managed to work out I can borrow a third through, invoice discounting and, a recovery loan scheme, which were available at the time in the good old days, when you could get cheap money really easily. That paid for initial consideration. 50% on day one. Yeah. And then we paid the rest over 5 years. So that was just over 3 years ago. So I've got another 2 years of payments, to make on that one. So it was quite easy to raise the money on that one. It was a good, diverse debtor book, but unfortunately the manager who had introduced me to the deal, wasn't particularly good. And he resigned about 18 months ago. But the guy who I bought it off emailed me and said, I've heard Jim's left. Anything I can help with? So I was like, what do you have in mind? So he's now back running the business for me. He didn't like being retired, the board. So we've had to sort of, do a turnaround on that business, but that's now really busy. Good, strong order books and new customers. Positives and negatives on that deal, but hopefully now that's now making money. So that's a decent deal.
So this is really following the corporate structure advice that we talk about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of compartmentalizing your risk. So if you do have a toxic business, you can let it go without it infecting your good businesses.
And I'll talk through the deal that went wrong where we had to do that. So bought this business in March 2022. It was a retirement sale. My IFA introduced me to the sellers. It was also their client, and they said we need whatever it is. I can't remember how much it was. We funded it the same way as Ashlyne with a bit of invoice discounting, a recovery loan, and that had cash in the bank. They were really motivated sellers, but it took quite a while to get the deal done, and it took a long time to raise the funds, which is a lesson learned. And something just wasn't right. When I went to visit it, I didn't like the place, but we were so far down the line. I wanted to get the deal done. One of the sellers, used to produce the management accounts, but now the guy looked after the accountant, in-house accountant, should we say, bookkeeper, stepped up to do the accounts. So we didn't get the first set of management accounts till sort of May time. Showed a big loss. And I knew cash flow had been tight anyway. And then we get May's accounts, showed a big loss. And basically the sellers had taken out a load of cash before completion, and they hadn't been ordering goods in from China, which needed paying for in advance. So
there was more cash.
The cash was looking really good.
Yeah.
So they screwed me over really. But in hindsight, maybe if I'd done my own due diligence, I should have picked up on that. And I also should have picked up on how the cost base of the business worked. So I assumed that one aspect of the business was more profitable than it actually was. So that's on me, really. That's a lesson learned. So I now do my own due diligence on all the deals. It was losing money every month. And I just thought that there's no way that we can restructure this business. So unfortunately, I had to make the difficult decision after 6 months to liquidate the company, which was a hard thing to do. Tell staff that they've lost their jobs. But I knew it wasn't really on me. It was on the sellers. So they didn't get their deferred consideration because the business wasn't there. We structured it so all the risk was within that business or within the holding company. So then we just closed down both businesses.
Thank goodness you followed the structure.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I see people shortcut the structure
yeah.
and say, I don't need to do this, or my accountant told me this. But no, we have a corporate structure that prevents you from getting yourself into hot water.
Yeah.
And if you don't follow it, then because someone advised you not to, well, you're going to be have a problem later.
Yeah.
On.
So for me, it justifies why we do no money down deals because of the risks involved. It justifies why we structure deals and the organisation, corporate structure like Jonathan advises. But one of the key work learnings is don't be afraid to walk away at the last minute.
Yeah.
If it's not right. In hindsight, I should have done it, but also now be more confident to do it because you've been burnt on it.
You take the emotion out of it and you say, is this something worth proceeding with? This isn't. I mean, it's one of those things that might never happen, but you need to be prepared for if it does happen. Because the more deals you do, the more chance you are of you're going to have a duff one somewhere. It's like if you buy property, you've got buy to let property. One day you get one that always has nightmare tenants and there's always maintenance costs. You think, why did I even buy that one? You can't wait to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Can we move on to Aurora?
Yeah. So I was down the dumps a bit when we put this into liquidation, but that month completed on Aurora profiles. I wrote letters to companies with the same SIC code as Ashlyne Fabrications. Thought I'd do a buy and build around the metal fabrication industry. So I get a phone call from the owner of Aurora, which has got the same SIC code, but doesn't do the same thing. So I met him, good 4 million turnover business. I said, how much do you want for the business? And I think he said, I want £2 million. I was like, it's a bit high, but let me think about it and come back to you. But it owned the property. We managed to get a deal. I said, look, it's a bit high. That if you want that amount, I'll pay you over 6 years. And he came back to me and said, I think you're right. 2 million is a bit much. I'll tell you what we'll do it 1.8. So yeah, happy days. That'll also reduce the annual repayment. So I think it's a bit safer for the business. I said, yeah, perfect. So with a commercial mortgage and the existing CID facility, I've never seen this before or since actually. So on the balance sheet, in other debtors, it had over £1 million. Normally other debtors might be a director's loan or something. I said, what's this other debtors here? He said, well, because I've never fully drawn down on the CID facility and the company's been profitable, this is the excess availability. And I said, so you could draw down today £1 million? Yeah. I said, well, that could be very useful. So I said, well, look, we can use that money to get you a chunk of cash on day one. We agreed the deal structure. And I said, who do you bank with? He was, I bank with HSBC. I said, can you put me in touch with your relationship manager just so I can check that they're okay with this deal structure? So I emailed the relationship manager and I just said, look, hi, I'm been in discussions with Brian about Aurora. I also have an account with HSBC, Paragon Toolmaking. Here's the account number, sort code. Can we have a chat to talk through this deal structure? And he rang me up and said, well, actually, I used to be the relationship manager for Paragon Toolmaking, so I know that business. I thought, everything's falling into place. I said, look, here's what I want to do, the deal structure. Would that work from your point of view? He said, yeah, that'll work. Within a week, I had the funding in place, agreement from the bank, and the whole deal sort of went really smoothly. The only hiccup was on the day before completion. The bank said, oh, my manager's not happy with the transfer of funds for the commercial mortgage because we have to lend that to the company, not to you. We can't pay that straight out to the seller. I was like, you've known about this for 3 months. It's not, he goes, but I've got a workaround. There's actually enough availability in the invoice financing facility to pay all the initial consideration. So we can do that. And then the next day that commercial mortgage money will go into the company's account. So that was great. So they solved that problem for me. Day one consideration was about 1.2 million that we paid the seller. None of my money. We promoted the number 2 to be number 1 to run that business. We did a 3-month handover. Business is going fine now. But that was the biggest deal I've done and the easiest one. Easiest to raise money.
Yeah. So this ties in with what I was saying earlier about you just think bigger. You've got to stretch your thinking and go for bigger acquisitions. And the only thing holding you back would be your mindset and your knowledge about how to do it and whether you believe you can do it.
Yeah. So that's been a really good deal, subject to a few market fluctuations and steel price fluctuations. Then I spent the next 18 months sort of kissing a few frogs, sort of half getting there with deals. And then must have been last summer. I was bored one Friday afternoon, got a bit fed up because I hadn't done a deal for a while. I just thought, let's have a look what's out there, have a flick through. And on about page 3, saw steel stockist. I thought, well, we'll buy a lot of steel now with these businesses. That could be interesting. Could be some synergy there. And I clicked on it, had the price listed on it. Reading between the lines, I thought this is a fundable deal. We can do this. So emailed the broker and said, right, I'd like to can I have the information memorandum on this deal. By the way, I own these businesses in some in Yorkshire, this business in Yorkshire. So there could be some synergies here. So they sent the information over. I said, yep, that's great. Can you fix a meeting with the sellers? Normally, Jonathan teaches us to get the sellers to come to you. But this time I was going over to Yorkshire anyway, so I thought I'll come and see you. Drove over and met at their accountant's office. Their accountant was also one of the seller's wives. So she sat in the meeting. So we got on really well, and they wanted to know more about me. But they said, I've got my own website, which has details about me and the acquisitions that I've done. And the seller said, well, I've seen your website, and if you are sort of representative of what's on the website, you're the exact seller we're looking for. So we got on really well. He's into his sport. I'm into my sport. So we talked about that, and they were just looking for a safe pair of hands. So I said, okay, this is what you want for the business. It's probably a bit more than I might value that myself, but if you want to do that, let's structure it this way. I can pay you for what turned out to be a third on day one, and then I'll pay the balance over 4 years. They agreed to that. The only thing we had to discuss at length was there was excess cash in the business. They wanted to understand the mechanism for valuing what's the excess cash, but it helped. His wife was the accountant, so she said, here's how I think we should do it. And I sort of kicked the tires on that and agreed that structure. So it worked really nicely. So it was about $250,000 we had to raise on day one, but there's a debtor book of over 300K. So we managed to raise the $250,000 with a nice little excess left over for working capital and pay my expenses and what have you.
Your expenses. You mean a deal fee?
A deal fee.
Yeah.
That worked really smoothly their side, but got all the information over really quickly. I had 2 offers lined up for the CID, so picked the best one. And that was completed at the end of October. They were keen to complete by the end of October because we didn't know what was coming up in the budget, and they didn't want to pay any more tax, obviously.
Ties in with what I was saying earlier.
I wasn't bothered if it ran over. So they were keen to get it done. So that helped when any difficult clauses in the SPA, it helped. They were more motivated than I was.
And let's just make sure everyone's clear on that principle as well. So if you've got the negotiation isn't done once when you buy a business, it is an ongoing process up to and including sometimes the day of purchase. Okay. So the negotiation is an ongoing process where every clause in theory could be negotiated inside the sell and purchase agreement. And there are a lot of clauses. So if you've got some leverage in that negotiation, you will come out of it better than if you don't have any leverage. And there is the most perfect leverage coming up for all of us today, which is the increase in tax beginning of April, and then the following year, beginning of April as well. So they wanted to do it before the budget because there was this concern the tax increase would come in instantly. And in actual fact, it was a lot gentler than we thought it was going to be. But they didn't know that. No one knew that. Yeah. So they were probably more accommodating in the negotiation than they might have been otherwise.
Yeah. So I recruited management for this one. Paul, who runs it for me, was ready and waiting to step in on completion. So he now runs the business for me. Everything's going well so far, no problems, touch wood. But I think the key learning from this was the initial rapport and relationship we built. It worked that they were getting their number that they wanted. They were happy with who I was bringing in, someone with industry knowledge, because they were worried about their staff had worked for them for 20 plus years. They wanted the money, but they also wanted to ensure that the staff were looked after and the business would carry on trading. So I seemed like a safe pair of hands for them, who'd also sort of covered off their concerns in terms of succession and who was going to run the business. And we were all on the same page moving forward. We had this deadline at the end of October. So it was a pretty smooth transaction.
Very good. Well done. Let's give this man some applause. That's excellent.